podcast. I'm your host, Aaron, and today with me is Scarlette Joyce Rojas. Welcome to the show, Scarlett.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Aaron.
Can you tell people a little bit about yourself, please?
So I am a financial influencer, financial advisor. Been a financial advisor or in the industry for 20 years now. But I didn't get here, easy peasy. I had my struggles in getting here, especially as a daughter of immigrant parents, because I really never learned how to invest, how to manage money. That was a completely different language to me. But now that I'm here and I have my own investment firm, that's what I focus on. I focus on teaching first generation wealth, how to build wealth, because we weren't taught in the past. And I focus on subconscious belief systems that are holding us back.
Yeah, we don't get taught in school or nothing, do we, about how to kind of build our financial future and build kind of investments or to kind of look after our money. I find that insane that we still to this day are not teaching that in school.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And as you know, right, finances, if I could add anything into the curriculum of education, it would definitely be money management and taxes. Really how to file your taxes, how to understand, tax benefits. That would be super important. And entrepreneurship would be another thing I add in.
Absolutely. Um, how did your background shape your understanding of money and its psychological impact specifically?
I grew up watching my dad work two jobs to make ends meet. And so I remember as a child, I would really like wonder, what's my dad doing wrong? Like, why is he working two jobs and we still feel like we don't have enough? While my friends, get ballet classes, piano classes, they get to go on trips. And so I wondered, I'm like, okay, what is he doing wrong? And I think that that's really what kind of shaped my desire to learn about money. And so I really started looking at the mindset piece on money. I went from college into the finance industry and started noticing the same type of challenges people had. I'd have clients that would inherit $2 million and it was gone in 5 years. Like, how does that happen? And so I started noticing that there was a mental piece, a subconscious belief system that's affecting how we deal with our money. And that's what I work with now.
Absolutely. I think, I've been victim of that myself, to be honest, with
Mhm.
spending, especially in my younger days. And it took me a while. I learned it the hard way. I've had to learn the hard way how to kind of manage my finances and kind of look after my future. And having my daughter, actually having kids, really kind of focuses your mind to think about that, to think about actually what am I going to be leaving them, what am I teaching them, what am I showing them, and what are they going to be left with when I'm gone, kind of thing. So really does focus on my, but it's such a massive psychological element to money, right?
There is. And I think that one thing you bring up, something really important, is being cognizant of what you're teaching your children around money. And so, one of the things that I've learned, and it's in my book, it's you you pretty much create money depending on how you think about three things. It's going to be based on three things: how you think about yourself, what you think about money, and what you think about the world. Those three things. So, most of what I find with clients is what they think about themselves. That's the biggest challenge. So, for those of us that grew up in, for example, low income households, we took on this idea that we are low income, that is our definition, that's really where our family came from and we're going to stay there, right? So that kind of became our definition of ourselves versus that this is not me. This is just a situation and I am different. I can be different. And so I think a lot of people get stuck in their past and define themselves on their past, and they can't see this this new them in the future because they can't see it, right? So that's a really big thing is what are you teaching your kids about themselves? How are you making them feel about themselves? And what do you teach them about the world? Are you teaching them that they have to be constantly afraid and they can't trust anybody, or the world's not on your side? Or are you teaching them that yes, they can use the world because the universe is on their side, God is on their side, right? And then the last thing is, what do you teach them about money? So a lot of parents tend to forget that the kids are around and they argue about money. And that's the worst thing you can do, because then the child begins to believe that money brings problems. And in the future, they're not going to want money. So that's a couple things to think about with your kids.
Sorry, cut out a bit at the end
That's
there.
okay.
Um, what were some of the biggest mindset shifts then you've had to make personally as you've kind of navigated your career through finance and the psychological elements of it?
One of them is I had to redefine who I was, because in my child mind and in all of our child minds, we decide something when we're young. At the age of between maybe anywhere between 3 and around 10, there's a lot of subconscious beliefs that are being deeply seated in our minds. And there's decisions that we make as children. Some decisions might be, I need to only rely on myself, I can't trust anybody. Another decision that I've worked with so many clients, these are the ones that have come up. One of them is, I cannot trust the world. The world is a very unsafe place. Another one is, I can't trust men. So there's so many things that happen as a child that then you begin to think that way. And then all of the experiences that happen after that decision you made as a child only reinforces that thought process. Okay. So we're all going through that. For me, one of the biggest things is I'm not one of them. So these were the kids that did get to go on trips, to get the things that they wanted, to get the ballet lessons I wanted, So I'm not one of them, and that really took a lot for me to break through that glass ceiling that I had subconsciously built for myself, because I didn't see myself like that. So I had to really work on redefining who I am outside of my situation as a child. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's that emotional tie that we link to money, isn't it? And I suppose money is kind of tied to safety in a lot of ways, even though it probably shouldn't be as much these days. But because there's a lot of work out there for people, there's a lot of opportunities for people.
Yeah,
It's not as scarce or as difficult to get food and stuff as it used to be, and
right.
especially the days during the war when there's rationing and stuff like that. So, but I think we just still connect this emotional tie and safety to money, because if we lose our money, we think we're going to lose our house, we're going to not be able to feed our families and all that kind of stuff. And that real emotion, raw, probably kind of emotion from evolution that really drove us at the beginning of kind of humankind, really is present, isn't it? So it's a really difficult one for people to manage.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right, right? Where things are a lot easier now, right? But there's always going to be that sense of, okay, something, there's always going to be a challenge in life, right? So, but it is an emotional tie that you have to money, and it's super important for you to notice what emotional tie that is. You bring something up, you say something in regards to, it makes us feel safe. So there's different money personalities. And one of the things that I see when I work with couples is that one of them might have one money personality, and the one you mentioned is a super saver. They feel safe having money. Money is a security system for them. And then there's another one, for example, my ex-husband was a life enthusiast. So that person really believes, like, hey, you could die tomorrow. We never know. I'm going to live for today, right? So they handle money differently. And so your money personality really is based on the things that have happened in the past. And so sometimes couples will be under the impression that it's like, oh, you're not respecting what I want for us, in the money field. But what they're missing is that their partner might be just acting out based on their money personality, based on things that have happened in the past. So they see money differently. They may not see money as security. They may see money as a way to really live life now, because you never know what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, I understand that, and there's a lot of people out there who kind of, well, the ones I don't understand are the ones that kind of compete with other people materialistically, right? So they buy a lot of stuff. So there's a quote by Will Rogers that says, "Too many people spend money they earned to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like."
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And that is the big baller personality. So they do they impress, they buy things to impress other people. And the reason, there's always a reason behind it. There's always like an emotion, right? Like you mentioned, the emotion. There's always an emotion behind why they do this. And one of the emotions behind that is meaning. They're finding meaning. And so a lot of the clients that I work with that have that money personality, what has happened in the past is they've been rejected in the past, typically by a parent. And so now they are proving to themselves that they are lovable. And so they do that with the outside world. And so it becomes this love that they're looking for from the outside world. But the problem with that is that they're never going to be satiated by the outside world. It needs to happen inside. So they continue to live this big baller lifestyle, only to find out and consistently be reminded that it's still not enough.
Is there a social pressure to it as well? Because they all keep it up with the Joneses kind of thing. They see other people getting new cars and nice things, and they want to do that. And how can people kind of shift their spending habits away from that kind of mentality where we're just trying to keep up with everybody else to kind of show people that you're doing well, even when you might not be?
Yeah. There's two things you can do. There's a mental thing, like an inner work that you have to do, right? And then you also have to understand the outer positioning that um, we've basically been lied to, right? So number one, the outer position is consumerism. Consumerism is a real thing. It actually started a long time ago to create this desire, right? Marketing is made to make you want something. It actually is based on psychology. So it makes you want something, this keeping up with the Joneses. We want to be like people that we look up to. So we're consistently trying to get what they have, better them up, right? Consumerism was created so that we can buy more stuff, right? Because that helps the economy. So understand that this was created a long time ago for you to spend your money. So you need to understand this is an economic thing that was created for that. However, you need to be cognizant of what you're actually spending your money on, and then build wealth for yourself instead of building wealth for a company like Amazon or Louis Vuitton or whatever, because you're just making the rich richer, right? That's the logical piece of it. Then the other part of it is you have a keeping up with the Joneses mentality because you think you're missing something, because you think that you have to keep up with your friends. That is inner issues. That is something that has happened in the past. So you have to look at your past and you have to ask yourself, when did I feel like this in the past? Was it second grade? Was it first grade? When did I start feeling like I have to prove myself? When did I start feeling like I have to keep up with the other kids? And what you're doing is you are healing an old wound in that keeping up with the Joneses behavior. So if you find that old wound in the past, you can actually begin healing it from the inside instead of um, trying to do it with stuff.
Absolutely. And an interesting stat, actually, I came across when I was doing my research for the show is 69% of adults in the US admit to emotional spending.
100%. Yeah. One of the things I say is every time you spend, you're spending to either create an emotion or appease an emotion. If you buy yourself a sandwich, it's to appease hunger. If you buy yourself a new pair of shoes, even though you don't need it, it's to create the emotion of joy, but it only lasts very little time.
Why do you think emotional spending is such a prevalent issue then at the minute? And how can we use that behavioral science to kind of mitigate some of that? Because I find it quite similar to eating actually, because I had difficulty with emotional eating as well. So I find that that it connects to more than just money sometimes.
Yeah, it does. And you're right. You're super right about that. It's actually just like that. Because I think it was in my book that I said, hey, have you ever found yourself eating something and you're just like, I'm not even hungry, right? But you're doing it because you're nervous or you're bored. We do the same with money. So that's one of the things that I have people do is I have them look at your credit card statements for the last 2 months and then highlight whatever it is that you really truly didn't need and ask yourself, why did you buy that? What were you doing? What were you feeling? What did that purchase make you feel? How long did that feeling last? Right? Because we are emotional spenders. When we are sad, we might make ourselves feel better by buying something on Amazon. When we are bored, we'll do the same thing. Nervous. So yeah, emotions are very linked to your spending, and that's something that you have to realize. And one tactic to do is, besides looking at your credit card statements and really just spending time doing that, but one thing to do is anytime you're about to buy something, leave it in the cart. So even if it's online, I do that. So I shop around and I want something, I just leave it in my cart for a good week and see if I still want it. And typically the answer is I really don't want it. I maybe was just bored at that point, or at that point, I thought I needed a new pair of workout pants, but I really don't.
I like that strategy actually. That's quite similar to what I do with emails. To know if you get really angry, you write a really angry email. I write it, save it in my drafts, and then sleep on it. And then the
Exactly.
next day, I generally don't send it. So
Exactly. Perfect. Yep. That's exactly it.
it's a good approach. I like that. Are there any kind of common subconscious beliefs you think that kind of hold people back constantly from getting financial success?
Yes. One of them is I am not enough. Very simple. There is a lot of people that really truly believe that what they do is not enough. What they do is not enough. What they've accomplished is not enough. Who they are is not enough. And so that really that's one that I see a lot. Um, One way to begin healing that is understanding why you feel that way, right? So maybe like one technique I use is I bring the client back to that feeling, and then I bring them back to the memory that started that, right? And so when they get back to that memory, they understand, okay, now I remember feeling that way. And things after that time have just been reinforcements of that feeling. And so if we heal, if we begin to heal that, right? That little kid inside of us, then we actually can begin healing our relationship with money, and we begin healing our relationships with others, because at the center of everything is our relationship with ourselves.
Absolutely. And I take it these kind of mental blocks and some others are kind of addressed in your book.
Yes, yes. So my book goes over. So my book is 31 Badass Money Mindset Affirmations. And so it has obviously 31 affirmations, right? And it's an affirmation for every day. But what I did is I actually used psychology for the book, so that it's using two parts of your brain. It also has exercises, financial exercises, so that uses the logical parts of your brain, but the affirmations target the subconscious part of your brain. And so I also every day you have an affirmation, and then I also explain the affirmation as well. So, and give you an exercise. So it is using both sides of your brain and just unblocking, some of these things that have been there for a long time.
Absolutely. Your mindset around money is just as important as how you manage it. And that's direct lift out of your book. That's a quote from you. That's
Thank
it's
you.
it's you're welcome. Um, so we're kind of discussing how mindset shifts, you can shape our entire approach to money.
Mhm.
Um, what about the people who are not kind of conscious of it? We're just kind of going through, not even aware of what they're doing. Because I think when I was younger, I wasn't even aware that I was doing it. I was just emotional reacting, food and money. I was just, just doing whatever I kind of felt like at the time. How do you kind of reach out or help those people?
I think the biggest thing is, well, first, I cannot help anyone unless they are ready, right? So if you do not think you have a problem, there's no way I can help. But one way to quickly notice, hey, do I have maybe a subconscious block around money? Is look around you. Look around you and ask yourself, is this what I want? Is this what I wanted to create? And if the answer is no, then there is something holding you back internally. You need to stop lying to yourself and saying that the reason you are not where you want to be is because of outside factors. My ex-wife took all my money, or all my money goes to my kids, the government, right? Inflation, my job hasn't given me a raise for such a long time. All of these things come back to you and your decisions and your reactions around everything that happens. So once you get out of that, basically what I call a victim mentality, where the world and people do it to me, and you switch it to what can I do differently? What have I done to get myself here? That's the only way that you can change. So,
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to take on board as well, because that's important for how you behave and how you bring yourself to relationships as well. Because um, money fight's the second leading cause of divorce behind
yes.
infidelity, according to surveys that I've
Mhm.
read recently. So it's quite a powerful emotive issue, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I'm willing to actually bet, just because of what I see in my office, I'm willing to bet that it's actually money number one and then infidelity. Mhm. Just
Yeah,
because
that's a
there's
scary
certain,
thought.
before infidelity happens, the relationship starts breaking down before infidelity happens.
Yeah, and like I say, if we're not taught how to manage money as individuals, God help us when we're trying to do it between, manage a relationship and manage, sharing money and doing
Yeah,
things in that way is so difficult,
yeah.
right?
That gets so much harder. And it's the same, right? It's the same with when we are single. We have to bring a whole person, a healed whole person, or a healing whole person to the relationship. Because if we don't, then we are going to be expecting this other person to make us whole, and that is never going to happen. And then you're going to resent this person because they're not making you whole, they're not making you happy, they're not making you feel like you're important, right? So that's the same exact thing that happens with money. You have to be able to work on yourself and your own money issues, both inside and outside, like what's on your bank statements, right? And that's when you can say, okay, I'm ready to bring someone else into this world. Because if you have a messy financial world and you want to bring somebody into that, that's not going to fly 5 years from now. 5 years from now, that's when you're going to be sitting at, a lawyer's office or a financial advisor's office, and you're going to be trying to figure things out.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, to do that? And how would you recommend then the couples manage any kind of financial stress together if they're already in that kind of situation?
I think number one is to understand what each of you want without taking into consideration the other person. So uh, I've had when I sit with couples, I'll ask the husband, what do you want? What's this money for? What do you want out of your life? Don't think about anything else but what you want. Don't think about what your wife wants you to want, right? And he'll say what he wants, right? And why money is important to him. Then I'll ask the wife separately, hey, what do you want? The most amazing thing that I find is that both of them want the same thing most of the time. They're just going about it in completely different ways. That's the interesting thing about it. So then once I notice that, I show them this. Both of you are wanting the same thing. You're just going about it one way. You know, you might have a super saver personality, you might have a life enthusiast personality, you're going about it, but you're trying to create the same thing. How do we come together towards this goal and understand each other's thinking, but you're really going towards the same goal? Once they figure out they're going towards the same goal, it's easier that way because now they can begin saying, oh, okay, let's do XYZ because we both want the same thing. We're both on the same team. We just thought we weren't.
Yeah, I think it's like anything else in relationships. You need to set boundaries and communicate, right, and be open and honest about, what's happening and what you're trying to achieve. Really, I know it's easier said than done sometimes, but that's kind of the goal, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, number one is understanding each other's goals, right? Number two is understanding that both of you have different money stories from the past. So you might be trying to heal something from the past with your money now. And so instead of getting upset at each other, try understanding that and then helping, like working with it, right? So even if you have to get a professional involved, working with that, that's another way of doing it. But even while you're doing that, you can be working towards a certain goal for the year, and you should be sitting with your partner at least on a monthly basis and seeing, hey, how did we do this month with expenses? How did we do with budgeting? What do we want to focus on? Christmas is coming, so how much do we want to stay within a budget? Do we really need to get the kids 5 gifts each or 3 gifts each? Or can we do something different this time? So, talking about this as a team instead of just going and doing it separately.
Yeah, which happens a lot. I feel, or it
Yeah.
has done. From my experience in the past as well. You kind of do things separate, and then there's always misunderstandings and issues and communication issues.
Yeah.
Um, what about then combining finances? When would you recommend a couple do that, if at all, really?
Combining finances, I would actually do that when you are married. When you are actually combined as a couple, that is during marriage. And so when you're married is when you could combine finances. And I do believe in combining finances because if you are going to get married, then you are basically telling this person, I am going to spend the rest of my life with you. We are becoming one. Okay. When we become one, yeah, finances should become one as well. And we should be thinking of each other. We should be thinking of our family. We should be making decisions together. So I think that that's the only time that you should combine finances. I don't think you should do it beforehand.
Yeah, the thing is, if
I'm
you get
old
married, you
school.
are. No,
Huh?
yeah, I like it though. If you get married, you are committing for your life together, aren't you? So, it makes sense to, just share everything at that point and just, you know,
Yes, yes. And
yeah,
and really, Aaron, like if you would have spoken to me maybe like 3 years ago, I probably would have said something different. But I'm growing, right? And one of the things that I've noticed is I have sometimes women will come to me and then they'll say, oh yeah, I have this other account separate that my husband doesn't know about. Why? Why do you feel like you need to do that? Let's talk about that, right? Do you feel unsafe for some reason? Do you feel like you can't trust him? Like there's a reason behind that. Do you feel like, did you see that when you were a child? Did your mom do that? And the same thing, some of the husbands will be like, oh, yeah, I have some money separate in a safe deposit box. Why do you feel like you have to do that? So, yeah, I mean, I think that people do that. And I don't see the reason behind that. If you are committing to somebody, then you are committing everything. Don't do it, half ass, so.
Yeah, that it's a difficult one, that, isn't it? And like having a separate account is okay if it's kind of an agreed thing and it's not hidden and it's like, there you go, that's your money to buy whatever you want and kind of have that surplus to do what you want with. That's fair enough, isn't it? But kind of hiding it is a bit,
Yes, it's the hiding
yeah,
it, right? But if you tell your significant other, you tell your husband, "Hey, I have this separate one, and I'm just gonna kind of do my own thing with it." I'm sure your husband will be like, "Who cares? I don't care." Or your wife will be like, "Sure, whatever," you know? So yeah, it's the hiding it. And so that's going to be super important for relationships, is to be able to be open and honest with each other. Because if your partner finds out that you have something hidden or you haven't disclosed something, even though it's not considered, hey, I didn't lie to you, but it's trickery, And so then that chips away at the relationship, instead of just saying, hey, you're the person I've chosen to be with for the rest of my life, and I'm going to be upfront, honest, and open about everything with you. And then the thing is also is asking yourself, if you feel like you have to squirrel away money and not tell your partner about it, why? What's making you feel that way? Is it mistrusting her or him? Is it mistrusting the world? Is it something you saw in the past? Do you feel unsafe in the relationship? Why do you feel unsafe in the relationship? It's really getting to know yourself.
yeah. Or maybe is it mistrusting yourself because maybe you've set and agreed boundaries and you're worried you can't keep them, so you have this extra account to kind of do what you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've spoken a lot about kind of spending and habits for spending. What about kind of investing, and how does emotions um, affect people when they come to invest money?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So, when you invest, a lot of people are under the impression that, okay, I'm going to invest, the market's going to go up, 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 I'm going to make money, right? That's not the way the market works. The market works very similar to a marriage. It goes up and down and up and down, and you have arguments sometimes, and everything looks beautiful sometimes, and at other times it's like almost like a roller coaster. But over time, it's on the way up if you're doing the right habits, right, the right actions. It's on the way up. You don't on the first huge argument you have in a marriage, you don't go for divorce. And it's the same way with the market. In a first big crash that you have, don't sell out. That's when people get emotional. They're like, oh my gosh, the world is falling apart. Let's sell everything. The worst time you could sell everything is when there's blood on the streets. That's the time you should be buying. So emotions actually get in the way of good investing, because we tend to be scared and get out of the market. Versus when you're scared, that's the time to get into the market. Doing what's opposite of what your emotions wants to do has been my tip, my trick myself. So me, when I see that people are nervous and I get phone calls like, "Oh my gosh, should I be getting out of the market?" For me, there's something that triggers in my head that says, "Invest now." And so that's when I start investing. And that's actually a Warren Buffett quote. That's when there's blood on the streets, that's when you invest.
Absolutely, I've heard that one before, and it's very true. It's counterintuitive almost to people in it, emotionally at least. That emotion of thinking I'm going to just cut my losses, trying to save what I can of this bad situation, because
Yeah.
they're looking at that short term horizon, right? They're not looking at the long term horizon.
Yes. And what's really interesting is in behavioral finance, there is a statistic that shows that people, when they're invested, if they have, let's say, 100,000 and it goes down 20,000, right? That actually hurts them more than if they had 100,000 and it went up to 130,000. They are more likely to feel any emotion on the way down versus on the way up. Even though they made $10,000 more, it doesn't matter because the person is triggered by a loss more than they are triggered by a win. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
as an advisor, I need to think about that when I'm investing my clients' money, where it's okay, yeah, you may not be beating the market, but on the way down, are we protecting you? And that's important. So how you can use that to your advantage is just know that when you see your money go down, you may want to be triggered to do things that are dumb decisions 5 years from now. But you have to remember that on the way up, that feeling wasn't triggered in you. The happiness wasn't bringing as much feeling as the losses. So just know that's psychologically what happens in your head.
Yes, I've experienced it myself. It's a horrible feeling when something goes against you and yeah, you start lose money. It's it's a difficult one to take, and emotionally, you're just screaming inside, aren't you? You want out. But
Yeah,
like you say, when you get the wins or that it's moving in the right direction, generally that's a kind of a steady growth as well. So you're just like, not that bothered about it.
exactly.
But yeah, so and it is important to a lot of people. A lot of people kind of really focus on keeping money. There's a quote actually. It's not how much money you make, but how much money you keep, how hard it works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. By Robert
Exactly.
Kiyosaki. What do you think about
Yep.
that?
Yep. I think that that's right on point. I have six-figure earners that are making 300 grand, 400 grand a year. They're not keeping much of it. And then they come see me and they're like, okay, what am I doing wrong? Okay, yeah, it's your strategy, it's your planning, it's the emotional spending, right? And we need to relook at these habits. And so just because you make money doesn't mean you're wealthy, because all it takes is a company to tell you they don't want you and you're not wealthy anymore. All it takes is for COVID to happen and your business has to shut down and you're not wealthy anymore. So it's super important to understand that when you make money, you could be feeding somebody else's dreams with your purchases, or you could be feeding your own dreams and your children's future dreams by investing, saving, doing what you need to do with your money prior to it being spent.
Scarlett, you work with your work emphasizes really kind of generational wealth.
Yeah.
What's your take on building that wealth? A wealth that lasts beyond kind of our lifetime.
What's the question? What do you mean by what's my take?
So what's your kind of approach to it, I guess? Or what do you, how do you go about creating that wealth?
For the next generation.
Yeah.
Number one is looking at what you are doing with your money and looking at your habits. Okay. So look at your numbers and ask yourself, where is my money going? What's coming in? What's going out? The only thing that can happen is you can either make more money or you can spend less, or you can do both, right? And so taking that money, planning it for your future, whether that's in retirement vehicles, investing, having some savings, right? When it comes to numbers, I always recommend having 4 to 6 months worth of whatever you spend on a monthly basis in a savings account, not an investment account, in a savings account. So just in case of an emergency, that's your emergency fund money. Everything else after that could be invested. And so you can have that in a brokerage account. In at the same time, you should really be doing something tax deferred. That's where 401ks come in, IRAs, Roth IRAs. That's money that you're putting aside for the distant future. Okay, so you can be doing all three at the same time, depending on how you split it up. So, knowing your numbers and creating a financial strategy is number one. Number two is understanding your mindset and healing that so that you don't pass on your crappy belief systems to your kids, and you pass on good, solid belief systems to your kids. Okay, that's part of generational wealth. It's also teaching them how to handle money from a young age, not running to fix everything for them, but teaching them how to handle their money. And kids mostly learn with what they see you do. So if they see you emotionally spend, if they see you, you're walking through the mall and you're like, "Oh yeah, I like those shoes. Let's get it." They're going to learn the same behaviors. You may have the money for it, but you don't know if your kids will have the money for it, in the future, but the behavior is still there. So that's all part of generational wealth. Lastly, it's documentation. So, what documents do you have in place to protect your wealth? So, do you have a will or a trust? Do you have power of attorney documents? Do you have a living will? A living will is, that's what just says if, God forbid, you get into some type of car accident and your kids and your wife have to decide, do we keep him alive or do we just pull the plug? What do you want to happen? Because that could really split up families if that decision isn't made prior to that happening. So the documentation is a big thing too, to protect generational wealth.
Absolutely. That's so important that people get wills and stuff, especially, I don't know what it's like in the US, but in the UK, if you get kind of taken into a care home, um, and even if you've sold your property within 10 years of that, as in signed the property over to a family member within that kind of 10 years, they can still take it off you to pay for your care.
Yes, same thing in the US, except ours is a 5-year look back period.
Okay, we got 10, I think. Well, I
Yeah.
think I need to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's 10,
I
which
like the US better
is
based
a
on that.
long, man. Yeah, it's a long time that to get things sorted. So like getting a trust and getting your wills and everything sorted out is crucial,
Hmm.
really. Um, I have a little challenge for you going forward in the future, maybe for you. So
Okay.
obviously you've wrote your book for
Yeah.
for people and adults, and you're saying about the importance of teaching the kids. What about creating a book for kids or for adults and kids, a combination of the two, so they do it together? Might be an
I
idea.
love that idea. I love that idea. I don't know, like I would have to think about that to see how I would do that together. Yeah.
Just something for you to ponder in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that. I always love great ideas.
We've discussed general wealth, generational wealth a bit, but
Mhm.
what about kind of cultural narratives and different communities? Because obviously in the UK we'll do things differently to the US, and down like in South America they'll do stuff different to North America, etc. So, what kind of roles do they play? And especially now we're in a multicultural society, multicultural world, really, because it's so easy to get about everywhere. So,
Mhm.
what kind of impact does that have on generational wealth?
That's a great question. It has a very big impact on generational wealth. Your culture has a very big impact on generational wealth because there's expectations in certain cultures to take care of the parents, for example, right? So certain cultures really don't care about taking care of the children, right? And other cultures make sure that they leave money for the children, right? Same thing. Some cultures expect you to take care of the parents, and other cultures, the parents take care of themselves. So, understanding your culture and understanding what the expectation is super important because what happens is, as the sandwich generation, right? That's the generation right in the middle. You have your kid, but you also have parents that you're going to have to think about. As a sandwich generation, you're going to have to do planning for not only yourself and your children, but now you have to think about your parents, especially if your parents emigrated to the United States. They probably do not have the paperwork, the legal documentation needed to save their wealth, right? I'm not talking about legal citizenship. I'm talking about wills, trusts, power of attorneys. All of these things are things that I've had to help my parents with because they're like, what do we need that for? They don't understand the system. So that is a very big part of generational wealth because that could actually make you or break you. If I've had so many people come to me and say, hey, I had to use my savings because my parent had cancer, for example. And so I went into debt. So now I'm in $40,000 debt, right? Understanding where your parents are currently and what you can do proactively to save you from having to be reactive in the future is a big part of your generational wealth.
Absolutely. And you spoke a lot about kind of the importance of kind of keeping hold of that wealth when you've got it. So 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation, and
Hmm.
90% lose it by the third.
Hmm. Yep. Great statistic. Yep.
That's um, that's huge, right? That shows that
Yep.
people don't really know how to kind of maintain and look after that money.
Exactly.
Why do you think it's so hard to maintain?
I think it's because of those same reasons. One is the mindset that you're passing down, right? I could be building my wealth right now and I have the knowledge to do it, but does my son have the knowledge to keep it? Does he know how to invest it if, God forbid, I was to die tomorrow? Does he know what to do? And I think that that's one of the biggest pieces to it. It's the mindset that you are passing down to your children, the knowledge you are passing down to your children, the documentation. Are they going to have to give part of it to the court because you didn't plan correctly? So those are the biggest pieces there.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of it as well. Thinking about it now, I don't talk about money with my kids. I don't
Mhm.
tell them anything about money really. I just kind of get on with it and don't involve them in the conversation at all, which is probably a bad thing, really.
Yeah, because then they're learning about money from what they see and on TikTok, on Instagram, what they see their friends do, and so they're pretty much blind to finances. But you can begin teaching your kids slowly, right? When you go to the grocery stores, teaching them how to look at prices, teaching them what's going through your head when you purchase things. Little things like that can help when they get gifts. Oh, hey, grandma gave them, a $20 bill. So what are you going to do with the $20 bill? Here are your choices, right?
Yeah, it's definitely something I need to be more conscious about, really, because it's not. I think about it a lot myself and
Yeah.
focus on what I'm doing with it, but I never really have them conversations or involve them in any kind of money convo. So I definitely need to. That's something I need to look at, and I will moving forward, definitely.
Yeah.
So money causes a lot of stress, right, as well. So another statistic for you: 72% of Americans feel stressed about money at least some of the time.
Hmm.
So given that kind of financial anxiety is so common, how can
Hmm.
people develop, a bit more? I don't know. I don't want to say strategies. Maybe strategies is the right word for kind of balancing that stress and not feeling so overwhelmed, I suppose, with money.
Mm. When you feel stress over something, it's typically because you know something has to be done, but you're not taking action on it. And so, what is it that you're not taking action on? Typically, people feel stressed because it's either like, oh, I'm in a lot of debt and I don't know how I'm going to pay it, right? You need a plan, you need a financial plan. Other times, people feel stressed because they're like, they don't really know exactly what's happening in their money lives. Okay, well, then let's sit down and let's see what's happening. Spend time with your numbers, right? So it's really getting to know your numbers and getting a plan of some sort. That's what's going to decrease the anxiety around money. It's as simple as that. Sounds pretty simple, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it is really, isn't it? In theory, it's just the practicality. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think people try not to do that because they're afraid of what they're going to see, or they don't want to face it, right? But if you don't face it now, you're going to have to face it later. It's just going to be even worse later.
Yeah, I always.
It's like a, what do you call it? Like a gash, right? Like an infected gash. You continue to just put something on top of it to cover it. It's just going to get worse and more infected over time. And that's how your money life becomes.
Yeah, I always say that about everything. It's not just money. I say it with kind of, health and, diet and stuff like
Everything.
that. Yeah, if you can either pay for it up front because there's a cost to everything, right? So you either pay
Yeah.
for it up front and, reap the rewards down the road, or you put it off, put it off, put it off, and you pay for it down the road, and that's how it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's better to face it on your own terms, right? At least you can face up to it and do what you want to do, and then eventually you'll get things sorted. And it's having that patience as well for not having that. We live in a world, don't we, where we just want instant gratification all the time.
Exactly. That's true. That's another part of it, right? It's the that desire for instant gratification that's kind of getting us in trouble with all parts of our lives, really, especially money.
Yeah, it's not ideal, and there's just no patience for it. And I've been guilty of that in the past. I just want, even like with investments and stuff, I just want them to happen now. But I've got to kind of rein myself in and be take the emotion out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know if you've seen much of kind of Dave Ramsey's stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but he's big on kind of budgeting, bringing your money, what you spend down, and kind of focusing on stuff from that sense. So, what's one of his quotes is, "Financial peace isn't the acquisition of stuff; it's learning to live on less than you make, so you can
Mm-hmm.
give money back and have money to invest. You can't
Mm-hmm.
win until you do this." So, do you agree that financial peace is about kind of living on less, or is there kind of a balance between mindful spending and wealth building?
Um, Financial peace. I think I would define financial peace in really being able to understand what it is that you want out of life and moving in that direction. And understanding why you want that out of life. I think that brings peace. It doesn't necessarily, it's like, oh, you have to live under your means, right? I think that always helps 100%. But what is financial freedom? Financial freedom doesn't mean anything to anybody. What does mean something is being able to do what you would like to do when you would like to do it. Having the ability to say, you know what, I want to spend more time with my kids this week, and I'm just going to do that because I have the money to do that, and I don't have to go to a corporate job, or, I don't have to be in my business every day. So, that I think is financial peace. It's really understanding what it is that you want to create in your life, how money is going to be used to create that, and why you're wanting to create it, and moving in that direction.
Yeah, I like that answer because ultimately it's a tool, isn't it? Really, money's a
Mhm.
tool for us to to live our lives, and how we use that tool will dictate how well we live our lives. And success is different for everybody, right?
Yeah,
Success for some people is just a house, car, lots of time with their family, and that's perfect. Lots other people want more wealth. They want to to be fulfilled or to achieve their goals. But it's whatever's right for you, and it's like you say, you have to consciously think about that, get them ideas in your head so you know what you're actually working towards.
yes,
Because otherwise it's like just randomly driving around the US, right? And you could end up anywhere. If you know where you want to go, you can put it in the sat nav, and you'll get to the right place eventually.
exactly.
Yeah. So, if for people who kind of get to that point then, who kind of, create a bit of wealth for themselves, and maybe it's that first generational wealth,
Mhm.
how would you kind of help those people deal with kind of maybe a bit of imposter syndrome to a degree, where they, they're comfortable, they don't have to worry about money as much, and they're in a really good position. How do you kind of manage that? Because for me, once I'm doing okay with money. I'm not struggling
Mhm.
by any means, but I'm not super wealthy by any means.
Mhm.
But I think if I was very wealthy, didn't have to worry about money per se at all, I think there'd probably be a bit of imposter syndrome there, because I've not come from that background. I've not come from that kind of family. So how would you kind of help people deal with that?
I think there's a couple of things there with imposter syndrome. One of them comes back to what I mentioned earlier is how you're defining yourself, right? So you're still defining yourself to a past version of yourself that no longer truly exists. And so, really thinking from the future, looking at the future version of yourself and working from that perspective instead of the past perspective. The past is gone. So that's a big part of imposter syndrome. And the other part is this idea that you're leaving your tribe behind. We are all psychologically tribal creatures. We crave community. Even if you are, the type of person that's very independent or, isolated, you still crave community, you still crave love as a human being, right? And so this idea that as we grow wealthier, we are leaving our family behind. We're leaving our tribe behind. We're leaving people like us behind. That's somewhere in the back of our mind. And that's another piece that we need to annihilate. We're not leaving anyone behind. The further we move up, the more we can help our tribe and seeing it from that perspective. So there's those two things that are happening in our mind, in our subconscious mind, that could be holding you back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually when you say it that way, because it's it's probably something that I'm guilty of, is kind of holding onto the roots almost, and just be like, well, this is who I am, and kind of putting that together, rather than just becoming who I want to be, if you know what I mean.
Right. Right.
So
Exactly.
still working on it. I'm still working on it. Takes time.
We all are, Aaron, and I appreciate the time that we've had together, and for you to share your story and where you're coming from. So loved our chat.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being on the show as well. Where can people find out a bit more about you, Scarlett?
So I am on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, but moneymindsetadvisors.com is my website. So www.moneymindsetadvisors.com. You can go there. You can find all my social handles there. And I have a book out. It just came out on Audible. It's been out on print. This is it. It's 31 Badass Money Mindset Affirmations. I love the actual book because you can do the exercises right on the book. But the audio version is out on Spotify, Apple, and Audible. And so you can get the workbook as well. It's free. So you can find me there.
Cool. I'll make sure I drop a link in the show notes for people, just to make it a bit easier for them to find you and get a hold of you.
Perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure. Do you have any final messages or final thoughts that you want to leave people with?
I think that one of my biggest beliefs is that we are here on purpose for a purpose. Like there's no mistake around whether you're supposed to be here or not. And so that is a very big reminder I want to put out there. You're here on purpose for a purpose. And so don't lose sight of that. Who you are in your past has nothing to do with what you can be today and what you could be in the future if that's what you truly want. And money is really something that's used to create that. It's just a tool. It's not something that you have to chase. It's something that really chases you, and you can use it to create that life you truly want for yourself and your children.
That's amazing. Scarlett, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron. It was so nice to speak to you.
No problem. Take care. Bye.
Bye.